Welcome to Best Budtender. Today we're going to talk about if you really want to be a budtender and what it's really like to be a budtender. So, Markiece, been in the industry for 6 years?
Yep, 6 years, 4.5 years management, and then year and a half as a budtender.
So. All right, yeah. So, what do you think about being a budtender nowadays, versus when we first got into it?
Well, when I first got into it, which I was about around the same time as you,
Yeah.
It was a little different to say the least. I feel like it was exciting. It was new. It was something that everybody just wanted to jump into. We felt like there was a lot of lucrative opportunities, and it was cannabis. Who didn't want to be a part of cannabis, right? Nowadays, I think it's a little semi-overplayed.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I think it's an industry that you can be successful in, but I don't know if it's exactly what everybody thinks it is.
Yeah. No, it is. When we first got in, man, it was really like there was hope and moving up, and new stores were opening. Here in Colorado specifically, I know that other states have legalized since then. It was probably, about 2017?
Yep, 2017.
Yeah,
with my
right around then.
with my most recent.
So it was a little bit different in Colorado, but now it seems like it's almost played itself out. Prices have dropped. It's harder as a budtender to move up because owners are having less income, less revenue than what it was when it first went recreational in Colorado, especially, right? There was a lot of opportunity. Stores were opening, and then all of a sudden it just seemed prices dropped, and it became like bargain bin for cannabis around here. And it's just hard. Like, once you have that drop in revenue, it's hard to move up and for owners to pay you more. But you're still doing so much work. Like, it's so hard.
Well, then you see like all these, up and coming markets. Oklahoma, for instance. That's where everybody's at right now.
Yeah.
And Michigan, and some of these other places that have recently legalized. And it's exciting. And when you first get in, you're like, oh, there's a bunch of money to be made if you get in. When it starts.
Yeah.
In Colorado, we've had medical
It's been 11 years.
Yeah,
it's plus 12 years. Yeah.
And so it's not like this is anything new.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for us, we're extremely regulated, and so I won't say necessarily unfortunately, but unfortunately in this situation, because if you look at 2022, our concentrate limits were 40 grams.
Yeah.
Now it's 8 grams.
Yeah.
So like it's like they're trying to kill off business.
And before that, you could buy your limit. If you had a regular medical card, the 2 ounces, 56 grams, or you could have an extended plant count and come in and buy more.
As much as
you wanted on your card. Yeah. Now they're talking about limiting the packaging to 1/10 of a gram and changing it. And it's understandable in a certain aspect, like, right, we want to keep regulations. We've seen, of course, the Wild West, and speaking of Oklahoma, it's kind of crazy out there right now.
Right.
And they're having to draw back from what their initial bill was that they passed, but at the same time, you just over restrict, and you don't have, at that liquor store, you don't have a limit of how many bottles of alcohol you can buy
at all.
And so it seems like they're restricting it again to try and go back on what has been passed. But that's a topic for another day. But it just makes it hard, I think, for a budtender, because at the same time, it's a retail job, right?
100%, yeah.
But like you said, it's super regulated. Like, you have to check your weights. You have to make sure you're not overselling the limit to the customer. You have to make sure you're selling the right product within your POS and point of sale system. And then you have to make sure, if you're a manager, that your inventory is correct with the MED and the marijuana enforcement, because not only do you get in trouble as a company, but you can get individually fined.
100%. You lose your badge, your company loses their license, somebody goes to jail.
Yeah.
I've seen that quite a bit over the last few years, honestly.
And it's scary. Like, so versus, in Colorado, I would say a lot of budtender positions are minimum wage jobs. $15, $16 an hour, hourly jobs, no benefits. And you're having to do all of that back end inventory on top of customer service and sales and making sure that your store makes enough to keep the company going.
Keep
like
you
you're
on
the
the
front
job.
of the face still. So
100%.
man, like
I mean, I think back to, back when I was a Budtender, I mean, the highest wage I saw was $14 an hour. And that was less than 5 years ago. And now, I look at, in Denver, we have the minimum wage of, like $18. Okay, so you might be able to make a little bit of money there. But when it comes to like the traditional average person in regular cities across America, you're looking at that minimum wage, and that's comparative to McDonald's or
it is
any other fast food service.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, and that's why I talk about regulation so much, is because it's the same job but just extra work added on, right? Like
100%.
You're having to make sure you don't make mistakes, and then without the possibility for advancement, without the opportunity to move forward in the company and move up in management, it really limits you. You think about fast food, there's a McDonald's on every other corner.
100%.
For a cannabis company that you're working for, they're lucky if they have more than 4 or 5 locations, right? Like that's a big company.
Definitely.
In a state by state kind of business in the marijuana business. So
yeah, and I mean, even in the last few, I'd say, year or two, I mean, most companies that have had 4 or 5 locations, now they have 1, 2,
dropping back.
So they've had to cut back on some of those locations, and so what once was super lucrative seemed like all of the opportunity in the world is starting to turn into something different.
And you were talking about it, even vendors and edible companies, concentrate companies, they're starting to drop out. And you don't see the same advancements in those kind of third-party vendors anymore either. Within the dispensaries, they're limiting too.
With my last company, we cut several of our vendors that we've had for several years. Just because, at the end of the day, the company's in it for profit. We're not doing it just for fun. We're doing it because we're trying to make some money. And so, when it's not performing, you got to get rid of those loose ends. And,
And when you're in Colorado and you have to be a vertical company, I know in different states they're putting that into effect too. It's hard. I mean, when you have to grow your own product, you have to test your own product, you have to pay the electric bills, you have to pay the utilities, and then you have to pay the bud tenders to do the job in the front. It really limits the ability to grow in the company.
You have to pay your taxes, massive taxes, especially if we're talking recreational. I look at Denver specifically, 26.4%.
Gosh, that's crazy.
26.4% sounds like they're taxing almost like a commission check. It's ridiculous. But
it's insane. And so the day-to-day job of a bud tender, I mean, we're in management. What does it look like nowadays? Like, what is a bud tender come in and do it? I think the ideal, when you're like, I want to be a bud tender, you're like thinking, I'm going to go in there and see so many happy people that, like, on the show Weeds, right? Like, people that are happy to come in and like,
Weeds.
Oh, cannabis, right? But it's not anymore. It's when you say retail job, there's competition, right? You have to have the best customer service. You have to be on top of your pricing to make sure you're ahead of competition. Like, it's a way different job. So what does it look like for a day-to-day 9 to 5 for a bud tender nowadays?
I'd say it depends specifically on the dispensary you're working at specifically. However, typically, depending on how your dispensary is set up, so the one that I was set up at, basically the way we kind of handled things was bud tenders were responsible for sales, they were responsible for inventory, basic cleaning tasks, customer service priority number 1, and really making sure that at all times we're adhering to those MED regulations, making sure that we're not committing anything that's going to get us shut down, make us lose our license, and that sort of thing. And then when you go into, other dispensaries, I did a bunch of interviewing and stuff like that for other places, and what I would hear from other places is, some places they literally just have their bud tenders bud tend. But because all they do is bud tend, their wages are affected by that. They don't get paid as much. They typically have, some sort of tip split, so they don't get to take all of their tips home. They split those among 10 to 20 other bud tenders as well as their management. Where I was at specifically, our tips you take home, so it was nice, But again, it's a basic retail job, and I think that when people come in, whether it's for an interview or just coming in to shop for the first time, I think it's something that people forget.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's just a retail shop.
Yeah.
There are a lot of regulations behind it, but at the end of the day, it's just a retail shop.
Yeah.
No different than a liquor store, somewhere that's selling guns. Anything that is regulated, it's no different than that.
Yeah. So if you want to be a budtender, just be prepared for that, right? Like, I think we both have worked in our earlier years, fast food, and starter jobs and stuff, right? Like, there is a benefit to selling cannabis if you have a passion for it and you want to do that, right? Like, it is cool. Like, it is fun and interactive to be in there. I don't want to like downplay it, but just have realistic expectations. You're not going to be cleaning up, grease off the floor, but you're going to be cleaning the floors. You're going to be cleaning the bathroom. You're going to be doing all of that stuff at the same time. So just have those realistic expectations,
And I think it really depends on where you're at in your journey, I think when it comes to a budtender, I've had employees ranging from 21 to 40 something. So it really just depends on where you're at and what you're looking for in your journey. If you're looking for, a nice little side hustle or something where you can, feel like you're giving back to your community through your customer service and through your recommendations, it might be great for you. But I think if you're looking, long term and you're looking for longevity, you may want to consider your options.
Yeah, and there are opportunities for careers. I think that there definitely are, but it's a long play. It's not a fast movement like a lot of people think. And in some states with new businesses popping up, like there may be those opportunities, right? Like
definitely
to be and stay with that company, but you really have to adapt yourself and be ready for that. And so, what was your favorite memories of being a budtender or working in the industry?
Well, I've grand opened, 4 different locations.
Yeah.
And I'd say probably the best one was the first one. There's nothing like opening your first store, and I'll give you 2. I'll say the first grand opening of the company, because I was with a startup. I was able to kind of promote like you were talking about pretty quickly because I was with the startup company. But my second grand opening was also amazing because it was my opening.
That's cool.
And so,
That's
but
cool.
I'd say the first one was amazing. I mean, we saw so many people line out the door, food vendors. It was just an amazing experience. And for someone specifically who's cannabis was an issue in my life at one point, growing up and stuff like that, with like parents and stuff like that, to be able to make a career and become successful off of it was truly amazing.
Yeah, and show them that it wasn't all worth nothing, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not just the devil's lettuce,
Yeah. No, that's cool. So when you started being a budtender, what were your goals in the industry? What did you want to do?
When I first started, I was really taking a leap of faith. My girlfriend at the time was like, why don't you do something that you want to do? Which you're in your early 20s, you're trying to discover yourself, and you're like, well, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Well, I was really interested, in cannabis, and I was like, well, we just legalized, why don't I pursue it? And I was just at the legal age to where I could get my medical badge, or my MED badge, and so I pursued it head on, and I was blessed enough to start with a company that was brand new.
Yeah.
And so through hard work and dedication, I was able to promote, similar to probably your story, and it worked out well for the time being. While I was there. Yeah.
Our first store though that we worked at together, you got to get past walk through the weeds to get to the roses though, right?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. There's tough. There's good memories in the industry and there's tough memories, but at the end of the day, it's something I'd never go back and want to do over. Those, the bad stores were even fun at a certain point.
They were.
But when your license is on the line and everything, and you got to do stuff, it's not fun to be with owners that don't want to go by regulations.
That's scary.
Yeah, it really is. So if you're a budtender, I think there's a huge benefit to being with a company that not only you can promote within, but follows the regulations and follows the day in and day out kind of procedures that need to be done, and which just gets back to a retail job, and
Definitely.
having those standard operating procedures and being able to follow the step by step, that makes life a lot easier in the industry when you're with a company like that, versus some of the bad eggs that are out there, because they're out there. I mean, when you get to the owners and you get down to it, there's some that simply care about profit. And if you're a Budtender coming in and your passion is the patients and how cannabis has helped you in your life or helped family members and getting past other drugs and really being therapeutic and medical, and you work with an owner that only cares about their bottom dollar, right? Like, it really is hard to get past that when you have a passion for the job. And so I think that's another thing that really to hit on is being able to work past that, and be there for your patients, and know that if you're not getting the highest wage or your owner only cares about your profit margins, how can you do your job with working with owners like that,
Definitely. And I think back, like to my, career in the industry, and I feel, I think most of it I've been underpaid.
Yeah.
But I was seeking, the fulfillment of, taking care of patients and, the happiness and brightening up people's day when everybody thinks that, people come in for cannabis and they're super happy.
Yeah.
That's not
It's
necessarily
not a lot of the time,
the
man.
case.
A
Most
lot.
of the time they're not happy. They're
It's
real
tough.
people just
Yeah.
like you and I, and they deal with
Some
real
days it's
situations.
tough.
Yeah, it can be really
Man.
tough. And I think a lot of people join like, it's all about the tips, and I'm like, there's some days, you have a hard day, people come in and they tell you about what's going on in their life, and you just you're a therapist all day.
You really are.
And you may not even get tips like that, and that's just what it is. And so I think it takes a special person who really wants to give back, and really take care of people, and that has that caregiver mentality, that would be best suited for that type of work.
It takes that. Yeah. If you've never been in a retail job, I mean, customer service on top of sales is one of the biggest parts of it, man. And being able to have a customer, medical member come in, tell you their whole day, week's worth of problems, and then you still have to give them their product and make sure that it fits what they want and what they need, and then make sure it fits their price point, because a lot of people aren't coming in with hundreds of dollars to spend, right? So you have to find something that meets their needs, that meets their price point, and then at the same time still be caring and understanding, instead of just trying to work them through like a cattle, right? Like someone that you don't care about. You have to care about these people,
100%.
because at the end of the day, that's who's coming to your store, and whether you like it or not, and a lot of people that are bud tenders that get into the industry have that mindset, right? You've probably consumed cannabis, you like to use, you have kind of a mindset, but if you're getting into it just for the money, you have to have that understanding that it's different than just being a drug dealer at your house, man. You're you're taking care of these people to make sure they come back and spend their next dollar, because it goes to there's so much competition. There's someone on the next block. There's so many stores open, and especially in Colorado, the price margin is so low now. It's so hard. So you have to have as much return customers to be able to not only help the owner of the business, but to ensure that your business grows so you can move up.
Make sure you have a job.
Or you're just in a dead end. You're just spinning your wheels.
100%.
It's hard. It's a crazy game right now. So, and we were talking earlier, if you even think that's hard, then you have to think about it, the owner, if they're growing in their own vertical and they're growing their own cannabis, and then they're producing their own, you don't want to work in the grow or the lab either. It's all hard. You think it's an easy job, but you have to have a passion for this.
I'm gonna tell you right now, you do not want to work in the lab, and you do not want to work in the grow.
No.
That's just from my experience. And
yeah.
From the first place we worked at, that told me I didn't want to work in the grow.
It's urban farming. At the end of the day, even if you're in the nicest grow, you have the nicest setup, it's you are cutting down plants, you're trimming,
You're doing hard
you're processing.
work. You are a laborer.
You have to make sure the cannabis comes out right. And so at the end of the day, it's just a tough industry all around. And I mean, I love it. Like I love the cannabis industry. It's hard, like when you think about going to another industry or another job, they have their downfalls too. Like every time you look at a new job, you're like, man, so it's like that scales and balances of what do you really want to do? What does it look like for you? What is success? But if you don't come into it with the right mindset of knowing you're going to have to work, you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
I think that's the biggest awakening that most people walk into, look at interviews, people come in, and I don't know about anybody out there, but for myself, I've never gone to an interview, in sweats or with a hat on, anything of that sort. I'm always dressed to the T, because, you dress to impress, and you're expected to show up to work like that further, unless your uniform is outlated differently. And so it's just crazy, man, the stuff that you would see on a day-to-day basis, and people it's just, I'm like, are you trying to get a job? And so
do you think this is cool? Do you think this
would you apply for
good?
Walmart?
Yeah.
With like this, or I don't know, T-Mobile or any regular job?
I know.
Even sometimes dealing with customers, they try to bargain with you. Like we're in a dark alley. Like, can I give you 20?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely not.
No. And you still have to pay the taxes
and the
on
taxes
it.
on top of that.
On.
So go ahead and add 20
what
bucks
are you
on
talking
that.
about?
Yes.
I know. It's crazy. It is. And that's what you have to deal with day in and day out. Like, those are like the mindset of the industry and the progression of it, of people still think that type of stuff can happen when you have to do inventory. You have to pay your taxes. You have to be on top of it. And so it's just crazy that it's still in, 12 years since, Colorado's gone recreational medical.
Yeah.
It's just insane that that's still kind of the mindset in it.
Well, in most places, if they haven't seen it yet, a moratorium's coming.
Yeah.
So like Colorado's, we've got a moratorium. We can't just, one day I decide I want to pop up with a license. I have to buy someone else's license. They've set a limit currently.
Yeah.
And so, if you haven't had it in your state, it will happen. And, once that happens,
it's happening in Oklahoma. Yeah.
There you go.
They're limiting. I know someone that got shut down. They limited the 2023 licenses and they didn't buy one. And I don't think it's possible to get one. They've limited it because you saw it in Oklahoma, man.
Yeah,
Whenever they opened up those licenses, everybody and their dog bought one.
Well, it's the gold rush. We saw the first gold rush when Cali legalized, and then Colorado was legal for a while.
Yeah.
And then now Oklahoma.
Now they sell wholesale pounds to the dispensaries for $800. I mean,
it's crazy.
So it really is. I mean, when you have indoor cannabis being grown and sold for $50 an ounce. It's the market. Yeah, the market's crashed almost when that happens, right? And so it's hard to pay your employees. It's hard to give raises. It's hard to move people up, and so that's why it is so important. Like you've seen in having those operating procedures and running such a strict business to be successful. Like 100%. You have to do that and it's crazy that it's gone to that so quick. $800 pounds.
I mean, that's nothing. I mean, to be honest, even within the last month, I've seen pounds as cheap as $350, $400. So depends on what you're looking. And that's actually still indoor. Like if you want to talk about like outdoor, there you can get a pound for $75.
Yeah,
$75.
It's insane.
And so like. And like I
and
know
you think
when
that's
I say
a joke,
that's
dead serious.
When I say outdoor, everybody's like, outdoor. It's not, no, like.
And it's not the best weed either, though.
I'm not gonna make it seem like it's creme de la creme, but I'll tell you that for what a $75 pound that you get in Colorado, what that looks like.
Oh yeah.
In other places, people would pay a lot more for it, and so it's just very crazy to just see that, something that would have probably cost you, I don't know, 20 years ago $3,000, and you pay $50 for.
Not even. I mean, what 10 years ago in Oklahoma, on the street, $3,800 a pound.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, and then some of it smelled like gasoline. Some of it smelled like it should have been a $75 pound, man. You know, but it still went for that.
Yeah, somebody still paid for it.
Yeah, I might have paid for that. I don't admit to it, but God darn it. I mean, it's crazy. So, I mean, when you look at it nowadays, like it just is, it's coming to when we say retail business, it really is like it's no longer like a cornered the market type of game, man. It really is like you got to compete. You got to have the best product. You got to have the best customer service. You got to have the best profit margin. You got to have the most products. You got to have what everybody wants, or they're just gonna go next door and get it.
My dispensary had 33 other dispensaries on the same street.
Yeah, that's insane.
The same street.
Yeah,
like you don't have to go a mile directly across the street.
And that's one street. Yeah, I mean, you come into Colorado and it's town by town. Like there's stop off by stop off. Like it, and then you get to the big cities and there's 33 on a street.
Right.
Like within probably a 7-mile stretch.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane, and so it's just. Like if you want to come into the industry, I think the point is just to be prepared. Like be on your P's and Q's. It's a real job, man. You have to work and you have to have a passion for it. You need to have a passion for it. And the industry needs people like that to continue.
100%.
Because a lot of people are going to get out of it. And if you don't have people that have a passion for it, at the end of the day, it's just going to be a convenience store for cannabis.
I mean, you look at like a small town cop, a small town doctor, a social worker. They ain't getting paid.
Yeah.
They doing it because they love it and because they're helping people.
Good
and so
point, yeah.
if that's what you're looking for, then I would highly suggest joining the industry.
Yeah.
You know, and I think those are the people that the industry needs. That's the only way the industry survives.
Yeah. And it really is. And at the end of the day, like I did it for so long because I loved it, right? Like, and I did have a passion for it, and I've learned a lot from it. Like, at the end of the day, when you go through it, you see it is a real business, and you learn how a real business is run.
100%.
You kind of, when you get lost in the weeds of it, and you're not paying attention, you're like, well, why do I have to have these standard operating procedures? Why do I have to make sure our profit margin is this? It's the same in any other business. Any business you go to has that. Has to. You go to a pizza place, you have to make sure that you buy your cheese at this and you sell it for this so you can keep the lights on and your employees paid, right? Like, so it's not any different than any other business, but it is a business and it is a job, and you have to ensure those things are done. So I think that's just a huge, important fact of it. I think I'm glad we talked about it today.
100%.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Thanks for joining in on another episode of Best Budtender. We'll be back soon with more of your favorite topics. If you want to subscribe, please do, and let us know if you want to hear any other topics or if we missed anything in the video today. We'll see you soon.